Welcome to Bit by Bitcoin. My name is Dylan. It's astounding to watch thousands of retail investors pour millions of dollars into Bitcoin and the blockchain technology without really understanding the fundamentals of why this is so revolutionary. So in this video series, I'm going to do my very best to help us all understand the blockchain and the problems that it's solving in the sense of a centralized ledger. I understand this isn't the sexiest of topics, but until you understand why the blockchain is so revolutionary, you won't really be able to understand Bitcoin and all of the benefits that it can provide to society. So without wasting any more time, let's get into this. Before we can get into Bitcoin, it's critical we understand the blockchain, which is a distributed ledger. At the end of this episode, you'll understand why decentralization and distribution are at the core of why the smartest people in the room are investing in Bitcoin, along with understanding the blockchain and how it works. Blockchain in its simplest form is just a new technology that serves as a digital ledger. Ledgers are just records of transactions. You can think of your online checking account as a ledger, or the history of the title to a real estate property also as a ledger. There are countless forms of these, and it is quite literally the backbone of our society and economy. So far, these ledgers have all been recorded by a central authority like a bank or a title company. In the United States, we usually trust these companies, but Cyprians who literally had their money stolen by the very banks they trusted would have a story or two for us Americans. So remember this, the success of Bitcoin and blockchain is way bigger than what happens in the United States and whatever the ultimate fate of the United States dollar is. This is a global phenomenon. I'll have a full episode in the future on the pros of blockchain technology, but for now, just know that centralized ledgers, as we've had them so far, are prone to corruption because they're controlled by one entity. They're also expensive. Think of employees and buildings and all of the costs for these intermediaries that the customer ends up paying. They're also slow. Think about buying a house. It literally takes 2 months or more for these intermediaries to check the title and do all of the verification that a blockchain can do nearly instantly, and for a fraction of the cost, but more on this later. So blockchain is a database or a public ledger, a list of all transactions that have happened. When you record something on a blockchain, it's immutable, meaning it's nearly impossible to be modified. There is an inherent built-in system of trust that's provided by cryptography and proof of work. But more on these topics shortly. So here we have a blockchain, literally a chain of blocks, each one containing information, data about transactions, the hash of the block, and the hash of the previous block. Think of a hash like a fingerprint. It identifies the block and its contents, and it's always unique. If you change something in the block, you also change the hash. The fact that the hash of the previous block is contained in each new block means that if you change one block, it will invalidate all future blocks. This blockchain technology was created to solve the problem of centralized ledgers, so it's a way to implement distribution of power away from one central entity. Now, people will often get decentralization and distributed confused. So as simple as I can make it, all blockchain technology is a form of a distributed ledger, meaning the validation of transactions is not controlled by one entity. However, not all blockchains are actually decentralized. Whether a blockchain is centralized or decentralized is dependent on the design of the system, and it refers to the rights of the participants in the network. In a decentralized network, anyone can participate and transact on the ledger. Bitcoin is a decentralized blockchain where anybody can participate. Contrast this with a centralized blockchain where the identities of the participants is known and only certain participants can actually transact or post on the ledger. There's far more to unpack here, but we're going to stop here for now. Just know that blockchain really is intended to implement distributed networks and decentralization. They distribute the power away from one central entity, which brings a host of incredible benefits that we'll get into in future episodes. For now, just remember, blockchain is for way more than just currency. It can be used for registration of any tangible or intangible asset. The title of land, cars, boats, medical records, maintenance records, the list goes on. Blockchain creates a permanent record of history that cannot be altered. Let me illustrate. Think about a plane crash. The first thing authorities do is check the maintenance records to ensure that everything was checked. But what do they check? Paperwork. Well, guess what? That paperwork can easily be changed or altered by the airline in question, and thus that centralized power brings corruption, and the real truth to what happened sometimes can never be known. Blockchain eliminates these scenarios, and it does so for a fraction of the cost by removing the intermediaries. There are 5 things needed to implement a successful blockchain. First, we need a peer-to-peer network of computers, and these computers are called nodes. The network needs to be open to anybody and everyone. Second is cryptography, which is the means by which transactions are validated and the data that's being recorded is proven to be authentic. We'll unpack this in a future episode. Third is a consensus algorithm, or simply put, a rule on how to add a new block to the chain. There are many different rules and ways to do this, but in the case of Bitcoin, it uses proof of work. Let's break this term down because you're going to hear this a lot. With Bitcoin, the algorithm says that to add a new block to the chain, the miners have to solve a math problem that requires a ton of computational power to solve. This computing consumes a lot of energy. So shout out to any miners running on Tesla's solar roof and Powerwalls. But basically, solving these math problems takes a ton of work. So when they find the number that solves the math problem and then display it to the network, they're displaying what we call a proof of work. They're saying, hey, I spent a ton of energy solving this problem, so I earned the right to write the next block on the chain. There are incentives to do this, which brings us to the 4th element: punishment and reward. This is derived from game theory, which makes sure that it's in people's best interest to follow the rules. Rewards are given every time consensus is reached and new blocks are added to the blockchain. It ensures the rules are something that people want to follow and are incentivized to follow, rather than rules they just need to follow because somebody said so. Bitcoin miners are rewarded Bitcoin whenever they solve the equation and thus become the ones that add a new block to the chain. This is called a block reward. The rewards are cut in half every 210,000 blocks, or roughly every 4 years, but don't worry, more on mining in a future episode. And the opposite is true. If a miner becomes a bad actor, they'll basically be rejected by the network of nodes, and they will spend a ton of time and energy and never receive any reward, de-incentivizing foul play. And then the 5th element is market adoption. If only a few people are on the network, it's really not that distributed as the power is still centralized. You need to reach a point of critical mass to truly have a distributed network and to make it immutable, meaning the data can't be altered after the fact. Without a proper reward system that would result due to a lack of users, the immutability or security will break down quickly. And yes, as the network grows and the number of nodes grows, the immutability becomes stronger. Think about it like this. With a central bank, there is one location that burglars need to scheme how to attack. In a distributed network, there are literally thousands, and all eyes or all of the nodes are watching. And yes, as the adoption increases, the price of the currency on the blockchain, Bitcoin, appreciates. Just one of many, many more reasons. You may also hear private and public blockchains. A private blockchain screens the participants, limiting those who can be involved. Public blockchains, like Bitcoin uses, are open to anybody and everyone. Public blockchains are borderless, meaning I can transact with someone in China the same way I can transact with my neighbor. They also cannot be censored, meaning no one can stop the transactions. Cough, cough, government. And they do not require third parties or intermediaries, which add unnecessary costs. And real quick, a massively important sidebar. Remittances are when people, often immigrants, send money back home to their country where their families still live. It's a $500 billion market every year. Companies like Western Union charge these immigrants who are sending money to some of the poorest places on the planet anywhere from 10 to 30% to complete these transactions. I cannot wait for Bitcoin and blockchain to cripple these thieves and allow these immigrants to send remittances back home to their family anywhere in the world for a small, flat fee. Oh, and the banks close at 5 and are closed on weekends and holidays. Blockchain technology operates 24/7, 365. And there is so much more where this came from, but back to public blockchains. They're immutable, meaning they can't be changed. They're neutral, meaning that transactions are only valid or invalid, not good or bad, as no central party is objectively choosing. And there is no one single point of failure or corruption. Private blockchains are governed by a handful of entities. They are not immutable as they can be easily corrupted, and they're centralized. Remember that blockchains were created to solve the problem of centralization of power, so private blockchains are not disruptive. It is the public blockchain that allow us to implement decentralization on distributed networks where the real disruption lies. Enter Bitcoin and blockchain. So to close, one last major point is that blockchain technology gives each and every user the control of their data back. As it stands now, with centralized ledgers, Facebook, Google, your bank, and all of these central entities control your data, and they're making billions of dollars with it, sharing that data with basically anyone they would like to whenever they want to. In a distributed blockchain, users are in control of their information and transactions, and the data is complete, consistent, timely, and widely available when required. So if you made it this far, good job on you. I know it's not the most exciting of topics, but it is crucial to understanding this technology and knowing what you're putting your money into. So if you guys have any questions or you're confused, please leave your questions below. I'll do my best to answer each and every one of them. Thank you guys for watching until the end. I do very much appreciate the support. But with that, please take a moment to like the video if you did and consider subscribing for more Bitcoin content. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I hope that you have a great day.